A censor light is not going to fix this problem, and Democrats no longer possess the common sense to understand that not every problem in the world can be fixed with a regulation. But don't tell that to the advocacy groups who also want every future car in America to only start when the driver blows into a breathalyzer. Oh, great. My other car is a Senator Adam Schiff here last week when the subject of Trump's sliding poll numbers came up. Okay, but how are the Democrats going to blow it this time? This is how. Posturing, purity tests, the politics of I unfriend you if you're not exactly with me 1,000%.
Bill Maher's latest rant wasn't just a quick collection of cutting one, it was a full-blown demolition job aimed at the never-ending cycle of woke outrage and the Democratic Party's tendency to sabotage itself with self-inflicted wounds. Watching him, you almost wonder whether he's still just the cranky old liberal who wishes people would use common sense, or if, without even realizing it, reality is slowly shoving him across the political aisle like a grocery cart with a busted wheel that won't stop veering off course. The spark this time, another headline-grabbing controversy manufactured entirely by the perpetually offended. The target of this week's meltdown was none other than actress Sydney Sweeney, whose only crime was starring in an American Eagle ad where she wore denim from head to toe, casually mentioned her blue eyes, and joked about her great genes. That's it, but in the twisted logic of online outrage detectives, this somehow morphed into proof that she was signaling white supremacy. As though great genes were now secret code for racial hatred, Maher's response was pure exasperation, stripping the whole narrative down to its absurd core and calling it exactly what it is: delusional. For him, this isn't activism or progress, it's political theater at its dumbest, the equivalent of chasing shadows and mistaking them for monsters. And he made it clear that every time the culture wars latch onto something this trivial, the real issues slip further and further out of sight.
Uncomfortable racial news. It's sad news. We found out this week that Sydney Sweeney is a Nazi. That was just... no, she's not. But you all see the ad that she's out there. This is a very important ad that we're seeing now. There she is, dressed like Jay Leno in all blue denim. And she talks about the fact that she has blue eyes, and then she says, I have great genes, you know, because she's wearing jeans. But according to the woke people, this means that she's a white supremacist. It also doesn't help that her bra size is 36 KKK.
Bill Maher didn't just stop at mocking the absurdity of the Sydney Sweeney outrage. He dug deeper into the bigger problem that this kind of performative hysteria erodes the credibility of any genuine movement for justice. Because when absolutely everything is branded problematic, nothing carries weight anymore, and the word oppression starts to feel like background noise rather than a serious call to action. He pointed out, in his usual blunt style, that most of this outrage isn't about saving the world or pushing meaningful change. It's about clout chasing in the never-ending moral Olympics, where people compete to prove who can be the most offended. And here's where Maher landed one of his sharpest blows: the hypocrisy. If good genes are supposed to be a racist construct, then why do so many of the very same people wagging their fingers suddenly have no issue being selective when it comes to their own dating preferences, swiping left on anyone under 6 feet tall, or instantly dismissing someone who's bald? In that context, apparently, selective standards are perfectly acceptable. But the second an ad campaign uses the phrase great genes, it's recast as some kind of coded supremacy. The contradiction was impossible to ignore, and Maher held it up like a mirror, showing just how unserious and self-serving much of this outrage really is.
The name she gave her tits is the Proud Boys. But other than that, no, I will say this, they should have been aware when they wrote this ad that this is what some people were going to think. I don't think they did it on purpose, but I also think it's pretty funny that all the online social justice girls are like, it's racist. There's no such thing as good genes. Right, and then you go on Tinder and swipe left on every bald guy.
But Maher doesn't just roll his eyes and laugh it off. He treats this cycle of outrage as something genuinely dangerous. Because while the far left loves to brand itself as the noble force for equality and justice, he argues they're really in the business of demolition, tearing down anything timeless, torching cultural cornerstones, and then proudly dancing in the ashes while declaring it all progress. To him, this isn't activism, it's destruction dressed up as virtue. And honestly, he's not wrong. Anyone who spends 5 minutes scrolling through Twitter, X can see the proof on full display. Endless digital mobs piling onto the controversy of the day. celebrating each takedown as if it's a revolution, even though nothing of real value ever comes out of it, except deeper division and a little more scorched.
Post, Independent, NBC News, Fox News, Salon, KTLA, Newsweek. Piece after piece after piece after piece dedicated to the supposed controversy. What is the controversy? You mean to tell me that if you put attractive women next to a product, people might want to buy it?
Yeah.
Like, that's blowing my mind.
New York is New York. It's definitely it's the media capital, the financial capital. It is a bellwether like no other city is in this country. So don't tell me that who the mayor of New York is doesn't matter.
Let me play
than
devil's advocate for a second. Do you think, let's say, on the seize the means of production, do you think the mayor, that one person, if he is a democratic socialist, do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate.
Then Maher shifts his aim and turns the heat on the Democratic Party itself. And this is where things get especially brutal. He warns that if Democrats keep trotting out candidates, like Zoran Mamdani, self-proclaimed democratic socialist who wears the label, proudly they might as well go ahead and gift the GOP's campaign ads for 2028. In Maher's view, it's political suicide. Every time the party doubles down on figures who lean into radical rhetoric instead of broad appeal, they're not just handing Republicans ammunition, they're practically loading the gun and pulling the trigger themselves. What's supposed to be a vision for progress ends up sounding more like a parody of extremism. And Maher's point is that voters in Middle America aren't going to buy it. Instead of fighting to win hearts and minds, the party looks like it's busy drafting the script for its own downfall.
When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get. The state-run grocery stores, which work so well in Cuba and the Soviet Union and Venezuela, just bad ideas, and again, this ugly streak. Streak of anti-
Maher doesn't mince words. Here his message is crystal clear. Put someone like Mamdani at the top of the ticket, and you're basically handing the White House keys straight to J.D. Vance. Why? Because while Mamdani's ideas might sound poetic to a grad student sipping lattes under a Che Guevara poster abolishing ICE, defunding the police, hiking taxes on the rich, they're hopelessly detached from how most Americans actually live and think. Maher knows it, and deep down Democrats should too. Because voters aren't searching for utopian blueprints that only work in academic debates or on Twitter threads, they want tangible policies that actually improve life on the ground. And Maher takes the warning even further, suggesting that if Mamdani ever rose to the role of governor in New York, the entire state would morph into a live-action political science experiment, a petri dish for socialist ideals, while the rest of the nation sits back and watches in disbelief. Almost like it's binge-watching the latest reality TV spectacle, waiting for the inevitable train wreck to unfold.
AOC? I don't know.
One of, but who's, Bernie is, Bernie is, he's not a capitalist,
No, he's not, and he's also not president.
He's not, but
never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, but he will, trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people, they boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
But they'll do it regardless. Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom. Yeah, but they make anybody into boogeyman.
It has.
I think it was.
Just have more weight when it's real. When you can really.
That experiment tanks. Maher warns Mamdani's presidential ambitions will be dead on arrival before they even have a chance to take off. And this isn't some abstract theory, it's already playing out in real time. Just look at Gavin Newsom, once hailed as the Democrats' golden boy. His actual record in California has become political baggage that follows him everywhere, turning campaign stops into constant reminders of homelessness crises, rising crime, and energy blackouts. It's a perfect example of how big promises mean nothing if people can't trust you to keep the lights on. And from there, Maher digs into what he sees as the Democrats' most self-destructive habit, the endless purity tests. You've seen it before. If you're not 100% in lockstep on every single issue, no matter how fringe or impractical, then you're cast out, labeled a sellout, or worse. It's a political cannibalism that eats its own, leaving the party fractured and weaker while Republicans sit back and watch the infighting do their work for them.
Bitch.
But maybe your judgy ass is no prize either. And if you jilt a guy for not thinking enough about Black Lives Matter, just tell me this. What have you actually done that made any more of a difference in any black life than what your inadequate ex-fiancé did. I asked Senator Adam Schiff here last week when the subject of Trump's sliding poll numbers came up, okay, but how are the Democrats going to blow it this time? This is how. Posturing, purity tests, the politics of I unfriend you if you're not exactly with me.
Obama once warned that the perfect is the enemy of the good, and Maher puts a modern spin on it by adding, it's also the enemy of getting laid, and he's not joking. He's dead serious about how the same rigid purity tests tearing apart politics have now bled into dating, where people dismiss partners who, by all accounts, are the total package: attractive, stable, emotionally available, basically, the unicorn everyone claims to be searching for, only to write them off because they happen to check the wrong box on a ballot. Maher's point is sharp. That kind of ideological rigidity doesn't just tank your love life, it sabotages politics too, because it alienates potential allies, scares off moderates, and narrows your coalition until you're left preaching to a shrinking self-congratulatory choir. And the kicker, it's not just self-defeating, the left isn't simply eating itself alive, Maher argues. It's doing so with a smug moral superiority, convinced it's saving the world, when in reality it's handing the keys over to the very people it claims to be fighting.
Call the woke. They seem to embrace every sort of obviously, aggressively anti-common sense thing. I can't let people who have this worm in their brain, whatever that worm is, Bobby Kennedy's not the only one with a worm in his brain, take over this country. And I totally get that. It's just that if I had to balance the two, the left shit, yes, is still less fundamentally existential.
Otherwise, you might think that after torching woke outrage, skewering Democrats, and mocking political purity tests, he'd be out of steam, but no, he still had plenty of ammo left, this time aimed squarely at what he calls the far left's war on common sense. Here's where he lays it all out in blunt terms. Letting biological males compete in female sports isn't progress, it's unfair. Giving children irreversible medical procedures before they've even reached puberty isn't compassion, it's recklessness. Hiring people based on skin color instead of merit isn't justice. It's just swapping out one form of discrimination for another. And the scariest part, Maher argues, is that these aren't fringe beliefs lurking in the shadows within certain activist circles. They're worn proudly like badges of honor, treated as if rejecting logic is proof of higher morality. To Maher, it's like a brainworm, an ideological parasite that convinces people to trade away reason for dogma. And his warning couldn't be clearer. If these ideas ever dominate the mainstream, society won't simply stumble along awkwardly, collapse under the weight of its own delusions.
Censor light is not going to fix this problem, and Democrats no longer possess the common sense to understand that not every problem in the world can be fixed with a regulation. But don't tell that to the advocacy groups who also want every future car in America to only start when the driver blows into a breathalyzer. Oh great, my other car is a...
Maher's frustration with Democrats doesn't just stop at ideology. It extends to their obsession with regulating every microscopic corner of daily life, a suffocating tendency that, in his view, strangles both efficiency and freedom. He rattles off examples: breathalyzer locks on cars, endless red tape for small businesses, mountains of paperwork that delay even the simplest tasks for months. What's sold to the public as fairness, safety, or the greater good often feels, in practice, like national-scale micromanagement that robs people of agency and bogs the system down until nothing meaningful gets done. And here's the irony, Maher delights in hammering home. Democrats love to brand themselves as the champions of freedom and democracy, yet their policies often resemble a kind of slow-motion authoritarianism, dictating how you think, what words you can use, what